Well, good morning. We continue to walk through the book of Acts. Last week, we had a real landmark moment as we talked about the conversion of Saul, who became Paul and became one of the most prominent characters in the book of Acts, in the New Testament, and writing the New Testament. But today we want to spend a little bit more time with Peter, and we will do that for the next several weeks. Peter, of course, was Jesus' right-hand man. He was one of the most outspoken, most vocal, most excited disciples that Jesus had. And we've learned about his story in the Gospels. And we see in the early church, he had a very prominent role. And so before the book of Acts turns its attention to Paul and his missionary journeys and his great work, we spend a little bit more time here under Luke's direction in the book of Acts with Peter as we see the gospel continue to spread. So we've been told from the beginning of the book of Acts that Jesus' disciples would take the gospel, the good news, the story of Jesus to Jerusalem, throughout Judea, to Samaria, and to the ends of the earth. And so what we see in this story today is some baby steps in the expansion of the kingdom. We've already known from Saul's story that the gospel had made it north to Damascus. And now on the map, we're going a little bit to the west as we extend to a place first called Lydda. But not only are we watching the gospel footprint expand, we are seeing a repetition of stories. You know, if someone tells you something once, you should listen to it. If someone tells you something similar twice, or 3 times, or 4 times, you should really take it to heart and think about it. And that's really the case today, because the stories that we are hearing today, the things that Peter is doing, are things that long ago Elijah did, and they're like what Elisha did, and Jesus did very similar things to what we will see Peter do today. You will even hear echoes of Jesus in the way Peter speaks to people as he does these amazing things. And so I want to encourage you to think about what that means for you and I as modern disciples of Jesus, as followers of Jesus today. How do we reflect these stories? How do we bring them to life in our world, in our time, in our day? So Peter has traveled west away from Jerusalem, and he's now in a place called Lydda. And in the town of Lydda, he meets a man who is paralyzed, a man who hasn't walked in 8 years. The man's name is Aeneas. And it reminds us of several paralytics that Jesus met and spoke to in very similar ways. Peter says to Aeneas, Jesus Christ heals you. Get up and take care of your mat. And so Aeneas, who, remember, has not stood in 8 years, at the words of Peter, by the power of Jesus, Aeneas stands up. He rolls up his mat and he begins to walk around. And as he walks around, he tells people what has happened. And many people in his town are amazed, and they come to Peter to hear where this power came from, this healing that has made this man well. And Peter tells them about Jesus, and they become followers of the way. They become disciples of Jesus. And Aeneas goes on his way, telling people all over about what has been done for him. Obviously, Aeneas, or someone that he talked to, went to a neighboring town called Joppa. And in Joppa, there were several people gathered in the home of a very dear and special lady. The lady's name was Tabitha, also known as Dorcas. Those are just two names from two different languages, two different cultures that were blended in her community, that she both participated in these different communities. So Tabitha, or Dorcas, had passed away. And Dorcas was very significant because she went about doing good to others. She went about caring for other widows and helping the poor. And so her death was traumatic for many. And I imagine a large group of women in this upper room where she has died, and they have laid her on her bed, and they are mourning, and they are remembering, and they're celebrating her life. They're heartbroken. And they hear the power that Peter has, this power that he attributes to Jesus, and they send someone to Lydda to talk to Peter. And the person they send tells Peter about all the good that Dorcas has done, all the people that she blesses, about her heart, about her serving hands, about her loving condition, and about the fact that she has passed from this life. And so Peter comes to the town of Joppa and is taken to the home of Dorcas. And when he gets there, the widows begin to show him all the beautiful garments that she has made, the things that she has made for them and for others, the beautiful work that she has done, not just for her own gain, not for her own glory, but for the good of people in need, to aid those who were struggling. She used the wealth that she had to be a blessing. Obviously, Peter was touched by this display of her work, by the weeping widows who had gathered by her side. And Jesus sends away everyone from the room. And everyone comes outside. I wonder, what must it have felt like to be sent out of that room? I wonder how those widows had felt as they gathered around the bed of the woman, of the matriarch that they had come to know and love and look to for support. Do you know what it's like to mourn? Do you know what it's like to wonder how life will go on with such a special person gone from your life? I wonder what they thought would happen when they left Peter in this upper room with Dorcas lying dead in her bed. Peter came over to her and he says to her, "Tabitha, get up." What happens when you invite someone in the name of Jesus to get up? They do. Now imagine, if you will, the crowd outside of Tabitha's door. As Peter opens the door and Tabitha, or Dorcas as she is also known, walks out. Can you imagine the group hug that must have happened? Can you imagine the feelings of joy, of confusion, of amazement, as this wonderful lady who was beloved by so many in her community was brought back to life by Peter? I wonder, how does God use us to bring people back to life? Do you think it's in different ways than Peter? If so, how? Because if Elijah and Elisha and Jesus and Peter, if the story of the Bible is the story of God's people bringing life, then how does that story of the followers of Jesus bringing life get played out today? I wonder. And I hope you will wonder as you think about these things in the week ahead.